Hello, it's Davina, and today I'm going to talk again about arts and education. Back in 2019, I had the wonderful experience of being able to work for Gallery 1 here in Ellensburg to do art camps for students. The ages were 6 to 12, and I was able to co-teach with another camp counselor for 3 of the, I think it was 10 camps that the gallery put on. I helped out with the arts in theater, the nature and art, and the full S.T.E.A.M ahead camps. It was a wonderful experience. Sadly, in 2020, those events couldn't happen. So, because of a wonderful grant by the Ellensburg Arts Commission, I'm trying to take some of the lessons that I did in those art camps and turn them into YouTube videos so that you can incorporate them into lessons elsewhere. The basic elements of art are line, shape, space, color, value, texture, and form. Some people also add in the material that you use to make your lines, your colors, your shapes, your forms, and others will also put in the manner in which you made your line. Did you make it by cutting, or did you make it by drawing, or did you make it by painting, or did you make it by putting 2 items together to form a line in between them? Those last 2, those are a little bit more nebulous when it comes to teaching, but I will get to that eventually. I'm hoping to do a number of videos to go through all of those 7 elements of art and also explore the additional 2 so that you can have a variety of art lessons to add in to other explorations. The first and most basic element of art is line. And one of the earliest examples people experience is coloring books, whether it's basic or advanced, just something sort of abstract. We give people coloring books when they're at a very young age, and they get to explore all of the elements of art through coloring books, except making the lines themselves. So that's what I'm actually going to do in this first lesson. I really like this style of book because you get all the elements of art just through exploring a coloring book. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to make our own coloring book page. And the first thing you need to know about art is all rules in art are more guidelines per se. And I'm going to start off with our very first coloring book page is going to have 2 rules. Rule 1, your line has to go all the way across the page. And rule 2, your line can never cross another line. So we're not going to do anything like this. We're going to make lines across our page. So lines must go all the way across the page and not cross any other line. Now, do you have to start off with something straight and then go to wiggly? No, you could totally start with wiggly lines going all the way across the page, but it's got to go all the way from one side to the other and never cross. So let's get experimenting. Now, you can absolutely use real art supplies, from simple little sketchbooks to larger art pads to even full huge sheets like this, which, by the way, I highly recommend, particularly for young children. However, not everybody has access to giant easel pads or even an art supply store. So if you don't, you could just begin with simple pieces of printer paper, just the regular stuff that you put through your printer. You can use a regular pencil or a fancy art pencil. I actually prefer to use a fine point marker because I don't want to hesitate. I want this to just happen, and I want to have it indelible so that later on, if I do color it in with pencils and the like, those lines are really firm. Now, Secondly, where am I doing my art? This table has texture to it. And if I were to try and draw on this, eventually the tip of my marker or pencil would hit one of these grooves in the table and it would change the artwork. Sometimes you want that, but in this particular event, I don't. So I'm going to take this pad, flip it upside down so I have a nice smooth area. If you don't and you're worried that the marker is going to bleed through, open up an old cereal box or some cardboard and have it down underneath as your artist area. It's nice, particularly for kids, for them to have a mat that is just for them to do their artwork. So you can find vinyl sheeting and the like that can handle a lot of abuse, but cardboard will totally do in a pinch. All right, so I'm gonna start with my rule. Line has to go all the way across the page. The first line is gonna be easy. There we go. I've got one line. Now, my next line, I need to go all the way across the page and not cross my first line. So, there we go. Easy enough. I can keep going. Now, so far, I've been going the way that I'm used to writing, which is from left to right. But you could easily go right to left. And as long as your lines aren't crossing, you are following the rules. Okay. I don't think I can put any more lines in this space without them starting to cross. So I just have to move down. Now that one's pretty full up, so I'm gonna move down. I wonder if I can put one more line in this one. Yes, I can. All right, I filled up about half of my page with these lines. Now, once you have mastered the rules, there's only two, pretty easy to master, lines all the way across the page, never crossing each other. Then you can start to bend the rules. Now, at a few points, my lines ended up touching. They didn't cross, but they touched. So on the second half of my page, what I'm going to allow is sometimes when a line touches another line, I can stop it right there. I have to try to get it all the way across the page, but if two lines touch, I can stop right there. So I'm still not crossing any lines, but if two lines touch, the new line stops. That's how you get lines like this, where they all come to a single end. So this half of the page is going to look a little bit different than the first half of the page. Okay, so we start off with just lines, then we went with curvy lines, which ended up giving us some shapes. And because of the way the lines came out, you can actually imagine a dimension here. So when I hold this in this direction, it kind of looks like water and sky. If I hold it in this direction, it kind of looks like leaves or the bark of a tree, or maybe wood grain. If I hold it like this, it looks like maybe flat plains and then a cloudy, windy sky. So you can have a lot of imagery that you can just do with line, and how you end up later coloring it. If I were to put these very same shapes in blue, they would look like water. If I put them in yellows and reds, they'll look like fire. If I put it in browns, it'll look like wood. So that's one way of using line. And now it can be treated like a coloring book, and somebody can go in and enjoy filling in pictures. But now let's do something with a little bit more structure. We're going to combine line to make shapes, and then use the same technique of filling in with more lines to finish the project. Now, drawing flowers is a lot of fun, and you can do it with all sorts of different materials. This here is sort of a tapestry, and all of these flowers are actually stitched in with wool thread in fanciful shapes and colors. Now you can stop here with just the lines that do the flower, but I'd like to move us on to something more like this. This is a rug that I own. Very similar technique to that tapestry. However, instead of a single line of threads, it's multiple lines of threads filling out the entire floral motif and all of this empty space here. So this is where we get into shape and space. This here is what's considered negative space. It's the background that nothing is happening in. And this is the positive space, where an object is shown on the piece. So we're going to draw some fanciful flowers and then fill them in with lines, and then also fill in the background. Now in here you can see they did sort of spirals, but because they were all in the same thread, it doesn't actually strike out at you as this being a true pattern. It's the flowers that really take your attention. So let's try to do this, only instead of threads in fabric, we're going to do it as pen on paper. So similar to that last piece of art that I did, I'm going to begin with a line that goes all the way across the paper. I don't want tiny little flowers. I want nice, big, exotic, fanciful flowers. So I'm going to start with a nice swoopy line going all the way across. And that's going to be the stem or the vine for my flowers to come off of. Now, after that, I can have little branches that come off. And now I can start thinking about flowers and little tendril vines. Maybe I want to do a little swirl here. Maybe I want to do a little swirl there. Maybe I want to do a nice big curl there. Okay. Line drawings like this are very free form, they're not very structured, which makes them great for young kids. Something that young children will sometimes do is they will make a single figure in one section of the art piece, and then they'll kind of ignore the rest of the space. So by having the rules of going from one side all the way to the other and using up the full page, or filling in all of the negative space, that kind of helps the children expand their view, and not just on the figures, but on the whole canvas for their artwork. So in a non-structured way, this is a great way to introduce the students to landscapes or figure drawing. There's a lot of ethnic arts that use this sort of technique for portraying objects and things like that. When I use this before, I've used this in art in nature, where because of the time that's necessary to do these sort of things, one of the teachers would read a story while the children were finishing this up. I believe we read Island of the Blue Dolphins, so doing a waterscape was very, very timely. I know I showed them woven baskets that have some of these sort of patterns in them, so there was a lot of crossover between the lessons that they were learning from art and nature to the art that we were doing to the stories that they were hearing. You can do that with art pieces. It doesn't have to be, we're going to just do an art project. We're going to do something that's attached to another lesson. I hope you've enjoyed this art lesson. The next one that we're going to be doing is a little bit more structured. We're going to be working on shape, specifically symmetry.